say that again. John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night.
Oh my God!
This officer named Michael Proctor.
Oh my God, Jackson did not disappoint. No! Yes, 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 yes!
Never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn. Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts. And he's been disgraced by his own agency, not by us. And when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
He's a cop too. We'll give him a pass. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Out on a date on a Friday night.
This is the best opening I've ever heard in my entire life. Hello, everybody. We are back on Buckle Up, It's the Law. Trial number 2 is off to the races. Opening statements by Hank Brennan and Alan Jackson. Oh my God. Yes, they did everything that we wanted, everything that we expected. The defense team is ready to fire. If you watched Hank Brennan's opening and now you're going to get to see my reaction to Jackson's opening, you will see the stark contrast between, because we're not going to do Hank's opening on this channel unless you really want me to. I think it's a waste of your time. But if you really want me to, let me know in the comments below and I will do it. However, I'm focusing primarily on the defense and cross-examination because that is where the meat of this case lies. That's where all of the fireworks are. And today, folks, oh my God, Jackson did not disappoint. I mean, I was literally on my way out of court this morning. I pull up and the first words I hear as I'm scrolling past, I hit the live button on NBC 10 and it's like, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Those are gonna be your verdicts in this case. Oh my God! Let's get into it, folks. I am so excited. I have spit flying out of my mouth. Let's go!
The evidence in this case will establish above everything else 3 points. There was no collision with John O'Keefe.
No! Yes! 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 Oh my God! Yes! Oh my God! 1,000 times yes! There was no collision! Melanie Little! You and I! We did this! We did that! We helped them! They're using it! They're using it! Oh my God! I am to the moon and back. Alright, let's keep watching.
There was no collision. There was no collision.
Those are the 3 things.
John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle. Period. The facts will show that.
Thank you, Melanie.
The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected to the facts and to the evidence.
Oh, those words.
And their assertion is contrary to science.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe.
You have to keep repeating it just so they learn. Yep. Because this is going to be a long trial. The theme is there was no collision. John was not hit by a car. Remember the interview that Melanie Little and I did? John was not hit by a car. There was no collision. Same thing. And he has to keep repeating it. That's his theme. There was no collision. There was no collision. He died because of other reasons. Rather than putting the burden on himself, because when you say Karen Reed was framed for the murder of John O'Keefe, it's hard. Now you put the burden on yourself. Now you have to prove through the trial. The jury's going to be expecting you to prove that he was framed. But by saying that there was no collision, you take the burden off of you. You don't have to prove who framed her. who is the actual murderer. The jury's not going to wait for you to disclose who the actual killers are. You know, Higgins, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, etc. Now the onus is back on the prosecution. You no longer have to worry about having to prove your case, because you don't have to prove your case as a defense. But juries are people. They understand simple things. They understand, like, well, you're going to tell me she's been framed. Who is she being framed by? But if John O'Keefe was not hit by a car, there was no collision. You see? That's what I'm talking about. Oh my God. I am on cloud 9 right now.
So how did we end up here? How does Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer named Michael Proctor.
Yes.
He was the lead investigator on this case.
Oh, this is huge, because now they get to say, now fired. And they already know what he's going to say because he said it in the first trial. Now they're painting a beautiful picture. Let's keep watching.
And he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop, who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question: is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Answer: nope. He's a Boston cop too.
Let that marinate.
That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about Mr. Proctor, why he said that, and what it really means. What you'll see and hear in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just a story of a tragic loss. And make no mistake, John O'Keefe's death is and was a tragic and tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with errors from the beginning, a rush to judgment, conflicted and corrupted from the start. Corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted by a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it. And they can't meet their extreme burden of proof, which the court will tell you is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. Members of the jury, Karen Reed found John O'Keefe dead on the front lawn of a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, at 6 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. Picture the scene. Blood-curdling screams, ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol cruisers, police officers, first responders, firefighters, all swarming all over Brian Albert's lawn. Literally feet under his bedroom window.
I love how they're painting a picture. Feet under his bedroom window. Look at how many people, and he's about to say, we already know it's coming. Not one of them went inside the house to talk to Brian. Not one of them thought for a second, hey, we should go in. No, we shouldn't go in. There's no reason to. He's a Boston cop. We protect our own. Oh, the one lying on the ground? Hey, he's dead. We don't need to protect him. Watch. He's about to say it, I'm sure.
Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder himself.
At the time.
Never came outside. Never went outside to see what the chaos was about. Never went outside to see if he could assist a man in need. Never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn.
Yep. That's huge. Oh, my God.
More shockingly, you'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house.
There it is.
That day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn.
Feet from the front door.
Never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses, He never properly collected evidence. He never secured the evidence. He never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home. He never properly canvassed the neighborhood. Michael Proctor never did any of these things.
Yep.
Even though fellow officers of Michael Proctor's actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight.
Oh, see, right there. How do you talk about framing without using the word frame? John O'Keefe was not struck by a vehicle. In fact, facts show he has been beaten. He was in a fight. Now the jury is going to think the word framing. Jackson never said it. That's lawyer work right there, folks. To make the person think the word you want them to think without saying it. That gives it so much more power, so much more panache. Everybody on the defense team have the je ne sais quoi. That goes without saying. Alessi, Yannetti, Little, Jackson included. I mean, I'm fangirling over them, obviously. It's not a secret. Everybody who's been watching my channel long enough know this. But there's a reason why I'm fangirling over them. It's not because I'm a criminal defense attorney. You know, in my civil cases, I'm a prosecutor. Did you know that? Not like a prosecutor in the strictest definition of the word. I represent you, the viewer, you know? I represent you with your interest. So-and-so hurt me. Well, I'm gonna talk to Larry. Larry, sue the crap out of them and make sure I get compensated. 1-844-774-HURT. That's our firm. We do personal injury. That's what Jackson is doing. He is becoming the prosecutor in this case. This is unbelievable. Jackson is now the prosecutor. He is not the defense attorney. Do you feel the paradigm shift from the moment he started speaking, 5-10 minutes ago when we started this video? When was that? About 12 minutes in at the recording of this video, of course, with all the segments chopped out in maybe 10 minutes or something like that, as my editor, Boyan, shout out to you, my friend, is cleaning this up. I'm telling you, folks, Jackson is the prosecutor here. The roles have been flipped. It is Hank Brennan who has to defend and prove his case. And now he's got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and Jackson is just the prosecutor. And like I said, in civil cases, you become the prosecutor. That's why I love doing civil cases. I love doing civil work, because in criminal defense, I already win criminal defense cases. I win when the burden is entirely on the prosecution. Now, with a smaller burden, are you kidding? Going to federal court, going to state court, that's like my new favorite thing. Saying, good morning, Your Honor. They owe us millions of dollars. Pay. And then on the other side, they're like, huh? No, we don't. And here's why. And I'm like, oh, well, here's why. And you do. And then you just fight it out in court. It's great. Like I said, I love my new pivot. I'm moving away from criminal defense. I'll still do criminal defense, by the way, for those of you wondering. I promise I'll go back to the video in 5 seconds. But for those of you wondering, I am still doing criminal defense. It's just I want to do high stakes criminal defense, like white collar crime. I love federal work. I love going to federal court. Federal court is like my new favorite thing. Thank you, Deuce, by the way, for introducing me, like reintroducing. I've done federal work before. It's been a long time, and I've been forced back into federal work, and oh my God, it is amazing. On both sides. I love federal court. It's rules, and more rules. I used to like district court because, it was more chaotic. Now, rules galore. And that's where you make the most money, the viewer. You, in civil cases and in criminal cases, yeah, I make more money, but you're not going to prison for 50 years. Big difference, 1 year, 50 years, or 30 days, 40 years. You see the difference? I've moved on to higher stakes things. All right, let's get back to the video.
During the course of this trial, you'll find that the Commonwealth will not have answers. You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy, one that is spread through the investigation. It's spread through the prosecution from the very start, from the jump. A cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured. And that cancer has a name.
I love it.
And his name is Michael Proctor. Now, you didn't hear his name in the prosecution's opening statement.
Of course not.
Not once.
Of course.
And I suspect that was probably by design. But make no mistake about it. The evidence will show in this case that Michael Proctor is the very definition of the Commonwealth's case.
Yes. Oh, I love it. He is synonymizing Michael Proctor with the prosecution's case. Now, every time they think Michael Proctor, they think, oh, this is their whole case. Everything else is water. And for the next few weeks, as they're going to be listening to testimony, they're just going to keep waiting. Where is this Michael Proctor? No? Okay, well, I guess this is not the important one. And they're going to keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And when the prosecution doesn't call him and a defense has to call him, if Hank Brennan is stupid enough, I'm sure he's watching this video right now. Hi, Hank. If you're stupid enough not to call Michael Proctor during your case in chief, because you have to do it. You're going to be shooting yourself in the foot either way, but not calling him is going to be 100 times worse than if you call him. So I know you're going to call him because I told you to now.
He's also their Achilles heel. He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part, that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. Every single bit of it has his fingerprints on it. You'll learn that Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts. Mm-hmm. And he's been disgraced by his own agency. Not by us, by the Massachusetts State Police. Investigated, suspended,
and fired.
The evidence will show that Massachusetts State Police found him guilty, found Michael Proctor guilty of bringing dishonor to the department for his conduct, not in some other case, not in some tangential case, in this case. The investigation of Karen Reed. Conduct that included bias in favor of his friends, the all-powerful Albert family, and bias against my client, Miss Reed,
the outsider.
Do you have any idea how hard it is for a state trooper to get fired?
Yeah.
Well, the evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it. Every bit of it.
And then some.
You'll hear that within hours of a Boston police officer being found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, who had investigated exactly nothing up to this point, right at the beginning, made an early pronouncement that Brian Albert himself was not going to, quote, catch any shit, end quote. And that was for one reason, and one reason only.
To protect him.
He's a Boston cop.
Yep.
The evidence will show that Michael Proctor made this statement in a text conversation with his high school buddies. A text he never thought would see the light of day, certainly never thought we would get a hold of.
Of course not.
And when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
He's a cop too. We'll give him a pass.
Oh my God.
You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, rank has its privileges. And the evidence will show that's privileges that you don't get and I don't get.
Yeah.
But apparently a Boston police officer, Brian Albert,
gets.
And his friends, they do get. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, he didn't care about finding the truth. In his world, his priority was to protect the brotherhood.
I love how his opening started out with, he wasn't hit by a car. A cop was being protected by another cop, even though there's a dead cop on the lawn. And he's focusing all of his energy on that rather than trying to paint framing and all that like he did in the first trial, like Yannetti did in the first trial. It was still a very, very good opening. I'm not trying to disparage Yannetti in any way, shape, or form. Believe me, I was fangirling over Yannetti in the opening in the first trial, over his opening in the first trial. But now that we know what we know, now that the first trial is ended, now that the first trial is ended in a mistrial, and we're in trial number 2, this is critical, absolutely critical for the defense, especially because they can't really talk about third-party culprit defense because Bev has pretty much all but excluded it, and the ARCA, he can't talk about the ARCA stuff. I understand the ARCA witnesses. They probably won't testify. Mark my words, Bev will find a way to make sure that the ARCA witnesses, Wolf and what's his name, don't testify. She'll find a way. She'll bend over backwards. She'll say, they're not testifying. I'm sorry. Nope. Mark my words. In 9 weeks from now, 10 weeks from now, that issue is going to come up and she's going to deny it. Because if she's not letting Jackson talk about it in opening, she's already pre-ruling. She's showing her intention to exclude the ARCA witnesses. And that's disgusting.
To protect that blue wall to protect his friends who were at the Alberts' house that night. I want to take a step back, if I could, and spend the next few minutes talking a little bit more detail about what the actual facts in this case will show, not based on speculation, not based on surmise, not based on guesswork or conjecture, but the actual true facts that you will learn through the course of this trial. On January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John and Karen had made plans to meet up with friends for drinks. It was a happy and normal night for them. They were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits, nothing out of the ordinary. They started at a local watering hole called C.F. McCarthy's. You've heard that name before and you'll hear it again. And eventually they made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another bar where they ended up. When they got to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, the Albert family was already there, already heavily drinking. You'll learn that this was no ordinary family, the Alberts. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Brian Albert was there at the waterfall. You'll hear that he's a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there with him. His brother, Chris Albert, a powerful Canton politician. He sits on the select board. The select board actually governs the police department, the Canton PD. He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, was there. Their daughter, Caitlin Albert, was there. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matt McCabe, was also there. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. You'll learn that a man by the name of Brian Higgins, also a law enforcement officer and longtime friend, longtime pal of Brian Albert, he was also there. And the two of them, the two Bryans, had been drinking most of the night together.
Playing grab ass.
You'll see video footage from the waterfall, which will show you that Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Just business as usual, out on a date on a Friday night. But that exact same video footage which lead investigator Michael Proctor plainly chose to ignore that video footage. It paints a very different picture of Brian Higgins. You'll learn that Higgins had romantic designs for Karen. That becomes important.
Later.
Brian Higgins had engaged Karen in flirtatious texts, but days earlier she had put a stop to it. She had ghosted him, in common parlance. In other words, just ignored him. The evidence will show that the first time he saw her and was in her presence after being rejected by her was when she walked into the Waterfall Bar and Grill along with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At 11:58 p.m., just minutes before John ultimately arrived at the Albert residence, you'll see a video at the waterfall of an unsettling interaction, troubling interaction between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. And unlike the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, in this case, you won't ignore that evidence. As the bar was closing around 12 midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house for a get-together to just keep the night going.
Love it.
And you'll learn that Karen and John ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address. And the evidence will establish...
See, it shows how much of an outsider both her and John were. That's huge. It's a lot easier to frame and throw somebody under the bus who's not part of the clan. They've never been to 34 Fairview. He already painted that the Albert family are a powerful, mafioso in a way, in so many words. Now that they're this powerful family and they're there for the first time ever, and there's allegation that he's been in a fight, the jurors are already going to be scratching their heads, scratching their chins, going, wait, so if he wasn't hit by a car, he got into a fight, who did he get into a fight with? Who killed him? Was it Brian? We keep hearing that name, Brian Albert. We keep now hearing Brian Higgins, who also had the thing for Karen. Was it a jealous stunt? Was it vengeance? Was it vendetta? Was it something else? Jurors are scratching their heads. They're wondering. They're curious. They want to know more. They're hungry. And there will be more, obviously, And because Jackson is far from done.
John got out of the SUV and went into the house. Let me say that again. The facts
Wait, what?
And the evidence will establish that John got out of the SUV and went into the house. Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally.
Oh my God, they went
The
for
data,
it.
the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night.
Oh my God! These just going for the gullet. Oh my God, folks. This is the best opening I've ever heard in my entire life. And we're only halfway through. We're only halfway through.
Eyewitnesses and forensic data will establish that fact.
Yes!
When he didn't come back out, you'll learn that Karen grew increasingly frustrated. She got
Yeah.
upset. She was left alone in a car in the cold.
She
in the
texted
middle
him,
of the
she
night,
called him.
with the car idling. John had gone into the house. She expected him to come right back out. And when he didn't,
She left.
seconds turned into minutes, and minutes started to clock away. She left John a voicemail, then another voicemail, voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text.
What a way to paint a picture, folks, by the way. He didn't respond to a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. Why? Because he was unconscious. But he's not going to say it. Or is he? I don't know. For that, folks, you are going to have to join me in the next episode. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. It's free. Everybody wins. You win. You get more of this content. I win because my channel grows. Everybody's winning. And YouTube wins because they're YouTube. And they're always winning. So like this video, comment below. And folks, I cannot wait to finish Jackson in part 2 of Alan Jackson's opening statements in the Karen Read case. Bye, everybody.